Don't mind me, I'm just Cody from an alternate universe, one where black t-shirts don't exist. What's up, guys, and welcome to my spoiler discussion of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Notice how I just said spoiler, and in big bold letters in the thumbnail and in the title, the word spoiler. If you have not seen this movie and you care about spoilers, please go and watch my spoiler-free review, or go and watch the movie preferably, and then come back and join me. But for everybody else, let's get into it. Quite a bit to unpack in this movie, actually. I don't always do spoiler reviews, but there's a lot of things to discuss here that are both good and bad, things that I want to elaborate more on that I didn't get a chance to in my spoiler-free review. And the first thing that I want to talk about, just to reiterate how awesome and how terrifying and how badass of a villain Scarlet Witch was in this movie. I think that her making that full pendulum swing, that we saw that almost complete journey in WandaVision, seeing that come to its fruition in this movie, seeing her just let everything that she has just lay out on the table, all the powers, all the rage, all the grief and the pain. She was one of the best villains that I've ever seen in this universe, honestly. Not that there's a whole lot of competition. There's some really good villains in this universe, but there's a lot of mediocre and forgettable ones too. But she's at least in my top 5, possibly in my top 3. I would have to sit down and do it. But I loved what Elizabeth Olsen brought to that role in this movie, and I loved how Sam Raimi utilized that character. I mean, the sequence where she's trying to get in to try to take America Chavez from this compound, and she's stuck in this warped little world, and she starts to use the water and the reflections to get at them like this little demonic spirit in this room, and when she crawls out of it, and it's almost like Pennywise out of It. I mean, from that sequence forward, I was like, Sam Raimi has arrived, bitches! All of the lines that they gave her, especially towards Doctor Strange, where she's like, I'm gonna show up there tonight, and you're gonna hand her over peacefully. Well, what if I don't? Well, then Wanda won't be showing up. This Scarlet Witch will be showing up. It's like, oh shit, you better run. And like I said in my spoiler-free review, this movie solidified for me that Scarlet Witch is easily the most powerful being in this entire universe. I don't care, Hulk, you can have Captain Marvel, Thanos, doesn't matter. This chick just lays waste to all of them. I mean, there was even that sequence in Endgame where if she had been left to finish what she was doing, she could have tore Thanos apart all by herself. To hell with all the rest of the Avengers and that gigantic army. Just send Scarlet Witch after him. She was so powerful and scary in this movie that I loved it. It's the best that I've ever seen from that character, and I've been fond of her character ever since she was introduced in Avengers 2, Age of Ultron. And if they didn't have me hook, line, and sinker with that first sequence where she's laying waste to that entire compound and she turns into a straight up like demonic character trying to get at Doctor Strange, whenever she comes in to the compound later on to take out the Illuminati, who are supposed to be the biggest, baddest, smartest, most powerful beings in this universe, and she just wipes the floor with every single one of them without even blinking an eye. I was like, dude, this chick is just unreal. The way that they had the blood all over her face, I was shocked. I was shocked at how far they went with that kind of imagery with a movie in the MCU, but I'm glad that they stuck with it, because just that little bit of blood painted on her made her so much scarier and much more effective as just, this is full-on villain. You know, Wanda's still in there somewhere. There's a glimmer of hope. I'm going to talk about that, but this chick ain't fucking around. And possibly the darkest part of her motivations, to where she's trying to get to an alternate universe to flat out murder an alternate version of herself and take her children. And I thought it was very appropriate that the realization of what she was doing, of what she was actually about to do, was what finally snapped her out of it. I thought that was really smart. It was really good writing, because up to that point, it seemed like there was no talking any sense into her. She's gonna have to be like murdered. You're gonna have to put everything that you have into making sure that this chick dies, because there is no stopping her. And I like the way that they actually got me to believe that there is a way to stop her. She has to finally realize what she has done, what she has become, what she has succumbed to, and that glimmer of hope that they maintained really well throughout this movie. No matter how dark and how evil her character got, how unforgivable, how murderous she gets in this movie, there's always that glimmer of hope that Wanda is still in there. and she never lost the audience, at least me, never lost me completely for 1 second, that glimmer of hope finally shined again and brought her back to reality for her to realize what she has done, take her own life, and end all of this, and get rid of the book, get rid of any possibility that somebody could carry on what she has just tried to do. I thought it was a very fitting ending for the character in this movie. I kind of doubt that's the ending of the character, period, but even if it is, that's a hell of a way to go out. Now let's talk about the Illuminati a little bit. Now this is the scene, the sequence, the catalyst for all of our big cameos in this movie. And I'm glad that I was somebody that maintained my expectations, that not just walk into this movie saying, let's just see who's gonna show up in this. Is it gonna be Tony Stark, Tom Cruise? Is it going to be Deadpool? Are we going to get the X-Men, the Fantastic Four? Everybody's coming to play. We're going to get Tobey Maguire again. I saw every single theory, every fake credit sequence plastered all over Twitter. People were just focusing on the cameos. And I'm grateful that I maintained my expectations to the point where that was the last thing I really cared about in this movie. I was here to see what Sam Raimi was going to do. Because at the end of the day, this sequence was probably one of my least favorites in the entire movie. I think that the entire middle chapter of this that focuses on the Illuminati, I think that it really does screech the movie down to a bit of a halt. Because the first 20, maybe 30 minutes of this movie, it's entertaining, but it takes a little bit to really get going, to really get full force into what this movie is going to be. Like I said in my spoiler-free review, anybody could have directed the first act of this movie. Sam Raimi is not felt anywhere. Then as soon as Sam Raimi shows up, you get this super ultra crazy, Evil Dead style Sam Raimi stuff in the MCU. And the last act of the movie is pretty much all that super crazy Evil Dead Sam Raimi stuff. And then right in the middle is this little pause break, this little commercial break to say, all right guys, let's talk about some cameos. Let's show up some cool characters from the rest of the MCU. And it just didn't really feel necessary to me. You know, there's a bunch of reshoots with this movie. I would almost bet that most of them were in this sequence. This is the one chunk of the movie that really feels like the mandated part of the movie, where everything else, for the most part, if the whole movie was that, this would be top 5 MCU for me. So you get this Illuminati sequence to where Doctor Strange and America are captured. They are in these little glass cages, and then Mordo, the alternate version of Mordo, takes Doctor Strange in handcuffs into this room in front of this council, and one by one you're introduced to these heroes. You get Black Bolt, who I've never heard of, but apparently is the leader of the Inhumans, which was going to be a movie in this universe, and I believe that they canceled it and did a TV series. Maybe it'll be a movie at some point later on, but yeah, Black Bolt. Then you have Captain Carter, who was introduced in the What If series on Disney+. It's as if Captain Carter, Peggy Carter became Captain America instead of Steve Rogers. So that's cool. I love Captain America. Cool to see that character. Then you have Mordo, of course. And then you have alternate version of Captain Marvel. So instead of Brie Larson, it was her best friend in that movie who became Captain Marvel. And then you get the introduction of Reed Richards, played by none other than John Krasinski. Now, that should be the biggest moment of this entire sequence, because people have been talking about how are they going to introduce the Fantastic Four, when are they going to introduce the Fantastic Four, who's going to be cast as the Fantastic Four, and John Krasinski and Emily Blunt have been the popular fan castings on Twitter for a couple of years now, him being Mr. Fantastic and her being Sue Storm. And when he showed up, that was the only moment in this sequence that I heard any kind of feedback from my audience. Both times that I've seen this movie, there was like one dude in my first screening and one dude in my second screening that went, oh! Now the problem that I have with this, it's not that it's not cool to see this character. It's that it just felt like pandering to me, which the MCU tends to feel like they're beyond a little bit. And mostly just with the casting. Now, I like John Krasinski a lot, and I think he's actually pretty damn good casting for that role. I don't know if he's going to continue and be in the actual Fantastic Four movie or if he just showed up for this, but it just felt like they went on Twitter and said, okay, what's popular? Yeah, we'll throw that in the movie. And his character doesn't really amount to anything. He's not really like this huge presence in the Illuminati. He doesn't do anything fantastic. And even when you get the eventual fight sequence with Wanda, you don't even really get to see any of his powers. The most that he stretches is when he just kind of enters the scene whenever she comes in and it's everybody but Charles Xavier standing down against her. And so it kind of felt like a waste to me. It just didn't really move the needle at all. You could have taken that entire sequence out of the movie or even taken his character out. My reception, my score would not have changed at all. And then you have what I felt was the biggest mistake that the marketing of this movie could have possibly made. And you have the introduction of Charles Xavier, played yet again by the always awesome Patrick Stewart. and he is stylized to look like the Charles Xavier that all of us 90s kids grew up with in the X-Men cartoon. He's got that little motorized yellow wheelchair vehicle, and there's even a segment where he's trying to show this vision to Doctor Strange, and he does the classic cartoon thing where he holds his temples and you get these little circle waves that come out, and I thought that was awesome. Even when he wheels out, there's a variation of the 97 X-Men cartoon theme. And I was like, yes, that is fucking awesome. But I knew he was in the movie because the fucking trailer spoiled it. The first trailer spoiled it. I'm usually good enough where I can watch one trailer and avoid anything else because that's where they start dropping all of the fucking teasers and showing everything that you need to know. Here's the whole movie in 2 minutes. But even the first trailer of this movie shows a segment of this sequence, and you just hear Patrick Stewart say one line and you see this blurry shadow like off to the side of his earlobe.
We should tell him the truth.
But everybody knows what Patrick Stewart sounds like. There was not a single person that saw that fucking trailer that is a Marvel fan that didn't immediately go, oh, Professor X. And so I, for the life of me, cannot figure out how the hell Kevin Feige allowed them to put that in the marketing. Easily the biggest surprise. If we didn't see that in the trailer, I guarantee that would have got a gigantic audience reaction when I saw it in the theaters. But nobody said shit because we all knew that Professor X was going to show up. And I'm sorry, you can sit down, Reed Richards. Getting the X-Men into the MCU and having Patrick Stewart return as that character that he has been beloved for playing since 2000, that is way more of a bigger deal than giving us a fan casting that Twitter came up with. Now, I still really like what they do with his character. I get past it pretty quickly. Of course, Patrick Stewart is just heartwarming in this role. I just love him as Charles Xavier. I love the fact that he's the one that still sees the hope, still sees the light in Doctor Strange. I love the sequence where he tries to take down Scarlet Witch by himself, goes into her mind, tries to save Wanda, and then gets his neck snapped by like this demonic version of Scarlet Witch. That was just wild. Again, shocked at how far they let Sam Raimi go with this movie. But man, I wish I didn't know about it before I walked into this movie, because that I would have reacted. I'd have been like, fuck yes! And so after this little trial, we get a sequence to where, like I already said, Scarlet Witch comes in and just lays waste to all of them. Black Bolt had the best death, because not only, it was a full-on horror death. Makes his mouth go away, just like Evil Dead and other horror films that we have seen, and he explodes his own head and his brains just deflate. That shit was awesome. Peggy Carter, they didn't really show enough. I mean, you see a little bit of blood on her shield, but it's more of a suggested death. But still, I mean, pretty dark for the MCU. That was cool. I think that she tore through Reed Richards so fast that it just made him look insignificant. I mean, he just turned into a bunch of Twizzlers, and I was like, okay, moving on. And if this movie proved nothing else, it proved that Captain Marvel, no matter who plays her, is just not a very interesting character. I'm not a fan of that movie, and it's nothing to do with Brie Larson hate. I was not on that train. I just did not like the character whatsoever. And you get this alternate version here, and she's just as uninteresting and completely useless because Scarlet Witch just crushes her like that. Now, once we get into the third act of the movie, there's a lot of really cool sequences. I really enjoyed like the battle of the music notes. That was just so weird that it could only exist in a Doctor Strange movie, so I enjoyed that. I did not watch What If, so I didn't know any of the backstory with this Supreme Strange, this more evil version of Doctor Strange, but I think even without watching What If, I got the gist. Okay, this is an evil version of Doctor Strange. Cool enough. That battle was really cool, and I love the fact, again, sticking to those horror roots, you get him blasted out of the window and impaled. Dark shit. Shit that I want more of in the MCU. And then the whole final battle between Doctor Strange and Wanda, to where he has to violate the rules and reanimate a dead corpse of the Doctor Strange variant that came into his universe at the beginning of the film. That was the best Sam Raimi, Evil Dead style stuff in this entire movie. When that corpse busted its hand through those pebbles, those cobbles, and just you see half of his face torn off, it was just like, we are in full Evil Dead mode, baby. This is fucking awesome. And whenever he actually got to where these demonic presences were coming all around and he took over them and turned them into a death version of his cloak, the metal fan inside of me was like, ah, play some Slayer right now. I'm telling you guys, if the whole movie was these sequences just the whole time, I would be over the moon. about this movie. I would be instantly telling you this is like top 5 for me. This shit is my bread and butter. I love it. So once all is said and done, Doctor Strange and America, having full harness of her powers, have defeated Wanda by showing her the evil of her ways. She presumably, for all that we can assume right now, has sacrificed herself and died, and everything's getting back to normal. The movie ends on a cliffhanger to where Doctor Strange is getting ready to go back into regular life. He's walking down the street. All of a sudden, he starts screaming in pain and shoots up, and that little third eye that was present on the Supreme Strange, or Strange Supreme, is now on his head, giving the audience this little tease like, oh shit, he used these dark powers. He used that variant version of the Darkhold book, and he said it takes a toll on you, so what does that mean? That was a great note to end the movie on, and just immediately coming out directed by Sam Raimi. I'm like, you're fucking right, this was directed by Sam Raimi. So I love the way the movie decided to leave off. Unfortunately, and I got to give credit to my buddy Rudy for really pointing this out to me, because I felt odd about the mid-credit scene, but I couldn't really put my finger on why, and he spoke my words that I didn't realize were in my head. So you get this mid-credit scene to where Doctor Strange, immediately after this cliffhanger ending, is back walking down the street. Raindrops falling on my head. And he hears his voice from behind him, and it's Charlize Theron. As a character that I have no idea who the fuck she is, did some research, it's a character named Clea. So if you guys were like me and don't have a lot of comic book knowledge, this is who the character is. She is the Dark Dimensions version of the Sorcerer Supreme, and I believe she also becomes a love interest for Doctor Strange, which I need to pause and do a quick tangent, because something that I did not speak on in my spoiler-free review that I should have, even though I really like Rachel McAdams, and I think she does the best that she can with this character. I think that the romance, the love interest dynamic between Benedict Cumberbatch and Rachel McAdams is among the weaker of the MCU. We've had 2 movies with them now. That's a big theme with him in this movie, is coming to the realization that he loves her and trying to get her to realize, even if it's just a variant of her, that he never stopped loving her. He just had to go do other things. He had to go save the world. Just be patient, bitch. But never really felt anything for her character. So I'm glad that there is going to be another love interest that potentially is going to be a little bit better for me in the further Doctor Strange movies. So that's what that's teasing, is that now this big character, this other version of the Sorcerer Supreme has showed up, and now they're both going to go into this dark dimension and kick ass. The problem with this mid-credit scene is that it immediately comes after that cliffhanger, and it shows that Doctor Strange is totally cool with that third eye, and it's not anything bad, it's not anything nefarious or evil, it's just presumably going to be more powers or a more clearer understanding, a clearer perception for whatever the universe is, and so that kind of took the wind out of the sails of that cliffhanger a bit for me. Then you have the absolute post-credit scene, the last thing that you see, which was much better than the mid-credit scene for me, because it's straight Sam Raimi. You got Bruce Campbell sitting there continuing to punch himself from that curse that the first act of the film he put him on, Papa Pizza, and then he finally, the curse lifts and he goes, ha ha, it's over, and it just total Bruce Campbell. You gotta have Bruce Campbell in a Sam Raimi movie. There is always room for Bruce Campbell. So now where do things go from here? Honestly, I don't really know. Not only because I don't have comic book knowledge, I don't know the storylines of Doctor Strange that we still have not tapped into yet. Obviously, they've teased him going into this dark dimension with Clea, and obviously Clea will be there for whatever we get, but I don't know if we're going to get a Doctor Strange 3 in the next phase or in the next couple of years, or I really don't know what we're building up to in this phase, and that this is a totally separate conversation than Doctor Strange, but that's the biggest frustration or the biggest confusion that I have with the current phase of Marvel, of the MCU, is that for the longest time in the MCU, we have always known what we're building towards. There was always this destination in sight after the first Avengers film, and they showed us Thanos, Infinity War, shit's going down. Now we are multiple movies past Endgame, and I still have no idea really, including the Disney Plus shows, I still have no idea really what we're building to. What is the new threat? What is the new goal? What is the new Endgame that we are building towards? And I'm still just very unclear on that. It's not making the movies worse for me, because I like standalone stories. I don't like everything having to build universes. Like, this film was very standalone and very focused on its own story, and I love that. But I am very unsure about where things are supposed to go in the future and what these different teases mean, because I just don't really, it's uncharted territory now with the MCU. Everything after Endgame is uncharted territory, and while I'm certainly looking forward to figuring out what that is, I am, multiple movies now, still sitting in a bit of a state of confusion about what's going on. Can we get a little tease, guys? Just a little direction, a little map, something. So all in all, guys, that is all of my spoiler-filled thoughts on this movie. I was educated a little bit on some of these Easter eggs and what things mean and what characters are, so hopefully this video educated you a little bit. But after seeing the film twice now, I can say without a doubt this is one of the better experiences that I've had in the MCU thus far, and I'm glad that Sam Raimi is back. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please click over here and check out my playlist for all of my reviews and rankings within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I'm also going to drop my ranking of the Evil Dead franchise right here if you're a Sam Raimi fan. Speaking of that, this weekend, this Sunday, I am going to be ranking all of Sam Raimi's films, so please like, share, and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss that madness coming to you in a couple of days. Thank you guys for watching as always, and remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean that you have to be.